Hello, welcome to the Wildline Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the box office. Today is the normal weekend review show for the weekend of March 29th through the 31st, 2019. I will walk through the box office top 10, do some deeper dives on the newer ride releases, Dumbo, Unplanned, and The Beach Bum. And then we'll talk about maybe some stuff outside the top 10, some smaller movies, and then we will move on to what's coming out over the next few weeks. But let's dive right into the top 10 for the weekend of March 29th through the 31st. Today, number one was, of course, Dumbo with $45 million. This is a super wide release in almost 4,300 theaters. Per theater average for this opening weekend of Dumbo was $10,600 per theater, which is okay. The overall initial reaction here is kind of disappointing with this opening. Tracking from Disney was looking like, and they were hoping for, to break that $50 million mark for the opening weekend here for Dumbo. That did not happen, and there wasn't really any indication that it was going to happen, even when the first early numbers were coming in from that Thursday night preview. They just weren't high enough really to get to that $50 million mark. Now, for Disney in general, obviously Disney puts out a ton of movies. A lot of them are winners, but every once in a while they have a movie like this that just doesn't perform up to expectations. Now, it's not necessarily flopping, but it is a significant underperformance, I think, to expectations, and also financially. I'm not sure where this is going to end up. The production budget was $170 million, which is pretty big for a film like this. It's going to have to make up a lot of that internationally if this thing's going to break even. It's certainly not going to break even just on a theatrical release. It's going to need those streaming auxiliaries, the TV deals, DVD sales, digital sales, all that stuff to get closer to that break even. So if we're starting the conversation that way, it's definitely more on the underperformance side of things. It's interesting when we talk about these movies. It's like, where do we pin them and their performance? And a lot of it really has to do with the studio expectation, right? With Dumbo, I think Disney, and if you go all the way back to when they greenlit this movie, they have had so many wins over the years with remaking stuff from their like treasure trove of old stories and IP that they have. But recently, they've had they've slipped a bit. If you look at Mary Poppins over Christmas, I thought that was going to be a sure bet, $300 million domestic. What would that be worldwide? Like, I don't know, $700 million worldwide. I thought it was a surefire hit. It's an old Disney standby they've had forever, always sort of does well, beloved in people's hearts, young and old, but that wasn't the case. It just didn't work out that well. It did 171 domestically, 346 worldwide, half of what I thought it was going to do. And I follow this stuff constantly, and like, to me, that was almost a sure bet, and it didn't happen. Disney also put out Ralph Breaks the Internet. That did pretty well, 200 domestically, 524 worldwide. The Nutcracker was a disaster. Came out in November of last year. 54 domestic, 170 worldwide. That's terrible. Christopher Robin, I think, underperformed. $99 million domestically, 197 worldwide. Wrinkle in Time, $100 million domestically, 133 worldwide. So now that I'm looking back on it, I'm just looking at these numbers now. I just pulled them up. 2018 was rough for them with these sort of family type movies. They have not done well. I mean, the best performance is Ralph Breaks the Internet, but that's sort of a really traditional animation sort of play. The live action stuff, the Mary Poppins, the Christopher Robins, those have deep histories with those brands, those characters, has not gone well. And so Dumbo sort of continues this losing streak for Disney. Now, of course, they have other stuff going on. They got Star Wars, which prints $300 million. They have Avengers, which is going to be the most successful film probably, maybe not of all time, but it's probably going to have the biggest opening weekend of all time, coming out in a few weeks, or I guess about a month now. So obviously they have money makers left and right. Coco, Beauty and the Beast back in 2017. Remember that made $1.2 billion worldwide. probably had a similar production budget to Dumbo. And so they've had some massive wins, looking like Zootopia, Jungle Book, but they've had losses. BFG, the Alice in Wonderland movie that came out in 2016, the last Pirates of the Caribbean, which actually did okay, $788 million worldwide, but I think it's the most expensive movie ever made, I've heard. But now in the last year or so, they've had this a little rough streak. They got a lot coming out. They have Aladdin come out in May. They have Lion King coming out in July. Mulan's coming out next March. Another Jungle Cruise is coming out next summer. They have a lot of stuff going on, but Dumbo does it's kind of a cold streak that they're on right now. In terms of, let's talk about the specifics about Dumbo and dive right into it. Let's talk about product quality, or film quality, if you will. Rotten Tomatoes score 50%. Terrible. 5.6 out of 10 was the real score among critics, so a little bit higher, but not great. So right there, you're seeing a massive weakness. This is not top tier Disney material. Audience score was 60. Rotten Tomatoes attackable, so I don't really know how accurate that is. Cinema score, I think, is much more accurate. A-, which is not bad at all. But again, that's opening night crowd is going to see it, so they're probably pretty excited to go see the Dumbo movie. That's not the Saturday audience. It's not the Sunday audience, obviously, because it's Sunday today. So that's a little bit better from the audience. Letterboxd score from the nerds. I'm as you listen to the show, I'm becoming more and more a fan of Letterboxd, just because to me, it's for film nerds and film aficionados, and so to me, it seems a little bit more accurate to the actual quality of the film. The film critic stuff is like, people get paid to write movie reviews, and it just, I don't know, there's something about it that it can give you a ballpark of the quality of the film. I don't know, for some reason I like Letterboxd a lot, because I think it's a really engaged community who really cares a lot about film, and I think they're very honest in their ratings. So this got a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, compared to other movies recently that are similar. Lego Movie 2 got a 3.2. How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World got a 3.8. Fantastic Beasts, Crimes of Grindelwald got a 2.8. Ralph Breaks the Internet got a 3.4. So it's definitely on the lower side, closer to the Fantastic Beasts 2 number of 2.8, because Dumbo's sitting at 3.0. So clearly, right from the bat, there's a quality problem here. The cinema score feels a little bit skewed because of opening night. The other stuff that I'm seeing, 3.5 stars in post-track, 4.5 stars from parents and kids under 12. That's also skewed, but the 3.5 is not super great. So I think that there's the Tim Burton version of this just is not playing well with people. Deadline brought up in their write-up that the trailer had no funness to it. I remember that, like, the first time I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, okay, another live-action Disney remake. I get it. You're trying to, like, milk every single dollar out of these old characters that you've had forever. Dumbo's, like, what, 70, 80 years old as a character? But there was nothing. It had that weird Tim Burton, like, dour, morose, almost macabre thing going on. And it's like, the original Dumbo movie is really sad, but, like, trying to play that now, it just didn't seem interesting. There seemed like there was no real hook in there. Like, why would I take, if I had kids, why would I go take them to see this sad movie about a sad elephant? I just don't get it. At the circus. Also, isn't the circus, like, passe now? Are they shutting down circuses? There's a lot weird going on here. In terms of the actual quality of the film, it doesn't look to be all that great objectively. People are not critics are not enjoying it at all. Film nerds aren't really liking it. Audiences, like mass audiences, seems kind of mixed. In terms of who went to go see this, females under 25 was the biggest demo at 31%. That's like a lot. That's a huge chunk of an audience. 31% females under 25. Females over 25 were 28%, so way over index on females. You're looking at 59% female. The average audience for a movie is 49% female. Men under 25 were 25%. The smallest quad was guys over 25. And that's from comp score and post-track exit scores, not cinema score. Sometimes, like, Deadline, like, kind of mixes in different. Cinema score is weird because I don't think they they don't really survey younger people, like under 18 as much, I don't think. And I feel like ComScore and PostTrack does. So I feel like their numbers are a little bit more accurate when you're talking about demographics. But the end of the story here is, under 25s over indexed and females way over indexed as well. In terms of the audience, sort of ethnic racial breakdown, 53% white, 24% Hispanic, 14% Asian / other. 9%, I hate when they say Asian / I don't know what that. This is so, I don't know. It's just so weird to say other. And 9% African American. That's pretty in line with an average movie. The African American audience is a little bit under normal, and the Asian audience is higher than normal, but mostly in line with your average film. $170 million production budget. It's not a hit like those other Disney films that we talked about, the other live actions. I'm thinking Jungle Book. And, I'm thinking, is this a harbinger for the performance of Aladdin and Lion King? Maybe. I don't know. Like how Aladdin's coming out in like 2 months, which seems so soon. Because I remember when it was announced with Guy Ritchie involved, I was like, oh, this is such a cash grab. This is ridiculous. And that was right after Beauty and the Beast had just, plowed through $1.2 billion worldwide. That's why all this stuff got greenlit. And that was about 2 years ago. And so all this stuff is sort of like, Disney's like, let's do this. Let's do Dumbo. Let's do Aladdin. Let's do Lion King. Let's do Mulan. Who's asking for a Mulan live action remake? Now watch it make like 1.5 billion. But my point is that like, these are clearly money grabs. And I'm thinking the Lion King one's going to work really well. Aladdin's already sort of a meme because it looks so kind of terrible. Dumbo, just nobody cared enough to even make a meme about it. And that's sort of what we're seeing here with the performance. It's not great. Deadline, the best thing about Deadline's write-ups is they're very comprehensive and they're wonderful and I use them all the time on the show, obviously. But they tend to get like these little insider quotes from people in the industry. And this is a quote from a finance executive, not at Disney, of course. They were talking about Dumbo. They said, "Who's the audience? How well is the property known? Where was the fun? Why did the trailer not have fun moments? How did they spend $300 million in aggregate on a non-multi-quadrant picture?" And he brings up a lot of good points. If you do like the postmortem thing I normally do, the first side of that coin is product conception, product quality. The quality's not there, so that's already sort of a red flag, potential failure point. The product conception also seems kind of suspect. I think they greenlit this movie because of the performance of Jungle Book and the excitement around these live action remakes and Beauty and the Beast, of course, as well. That's why it got greenlit, but then there wasn't a ton of thought afterwards. I think they thought that, hey, we got Tim Burton to do Dumbo. It's going to be amazing. Tim Burton's an awesome director. He's kind of really hot and cold, though, recently. And it got big stars to be in it. To them, it probably feels like we have all the elements. Let's just throw it in a pot and it'll turn out to be this great stew. Well, it turns out like it really does depend what ingredients you put in there, and the quality's not there. And I think the conception was not great. The marketing I thought was a typical, if you look at marketing quantity and placement, was pretty amazing. Like it's Disney. Disney has a machine. They have all these different outlets and mediums that they can use. And I think they used them very well for Dumbo. I think the marketing quality is always sort of dependent on the product quality, right? And I think here they struggled to make it look fun. They struggled to make it look like an engaging family movie that's going to be a nice outing on a Sunday or Saturday. It just didn't seem that way. It seemed dour. It seemed sad. And the original movie really is that, but like, that movie came out in a completely different universe when you're talking about moviegoers and box office, and people would just show up and buy, tickets to see whatever, like $1 to see a movie. It's not like that anymore. The difference is that like you have to hook people in. You really have to get your talents into their attention and sort of say, hey, you stop looking at Facebook, stop looking at YouTube, stop being on Twitter, or even within those sort of mediums, and pay attention to this movie. That's like the first step. Then you got to convince them to buy a ticket. And so more and more, to me, the box office feels like political campaigns. Like you just have to hit them over and over again with something that they're going to like and enjoy and engage with. And then they might think about buying a ticket on opening weekend. It's just a huge barrier to get over and hurdle to get over, to get someone to buy a movie ticket for opening weekend and leave their house. Like it is. And so you have to have really hooky and slightly edgy marketing to break through all the static out there. And I just didn't see that with the marketing on Dumbo. Okay, so that's, overall performance here is not great. Maybe international duos, it opened up internationally, so it has. So it's some $71 million from a foreign take so far. So 116 worldwide right now. Where is this going to go? This type of movie is going to have a high multiplier just in general. Let's just say an average multiplier for any sort of top 100 movie of the year is like 2.7 to 3-ish. Anything over 3 is pretty good. Usually, obviously, any movie in your top 10 is probably going to be over a 3x multiplier. Children's movies, so that helps with the multiplier a lot. Families don't go rush out to see these. They say the second, third weekend when it's less busy, and also during the week. So I would say, it's 45 now. It might go up with actuals tomorrow to like 45.5 or 46. I would say. I don't think it's going to go below 45. I would say a 3x multiplier domestically is kind of a given. Now, the quality's not fantastic, but like it's Disney, it's Dumbo, it's a kid's family film, so I can't imagine that it's going to like shoot below a 3x multiplier. I don't see that happening. Now it's going to go way over like like a really good children's film like a Zootopia or something like that. No, probably not. So I'm comfortable with a 3x multiplier. So that's 135 domestically. Let's say it's like 40 to 60 breakdown domestic versus foreign. You're looking at 330, 340 worldwide. I think that's safe. Let's overdo it a bit and say 350. If I'm looking at the numbers here, and this is just based on, back of the napkin stuff that you read from like Deadline and sort of general rules, production costs are probably going to be high. So they say $300 million aggregate. That's probably production budget plus print and advertising, which makes sense. It'd be 170 for production budget and then 130 for a worldwide P&A cost, which is pretty average for a wide release film like this. So you're looking at baseline $300 million cost, but it's going to be more than that. Like a 170 movie, production costs are usually about 3x overall. And I'm talking about from the moment it gets released in theaters to like 3 years from now when it's on every single platform. I'm talking about all of those costs and getting it out to streaming, digital, DVD, TV deals, all that marketing and stuff associated with it. You're probably looking at about $500 million, $500 million overall when it's all said and done. Now, the normal rule here is if it does 350 worldwide, it's only going to take in from all platforms over the next couple of years, probably 85% of that as revenue. So right now, and this is not probably super accurate, but it gives you kind of a ballpark. They're $200 million in the hole, right? So if they only take in $300 million on this revenue-wise, they got $200 million to make up to cover costs. Is it going to be that way? Probably not, because they see it's a lower performance, so they're going to hold back on marketing, but then it holds back on potential revenue. And so I think ultimately this is going to be a loss. I think that's a really safe assumption here. I think it's going to be a significant loss. I would say baseline 50 million, maybe up to $100 million of a loss here. Maybe they can find a way to make more money on the digital and streaming side of things. But I will say this, when is Disney launching their streaming service? So if they can't license this out to Netflix or a Hulu or Amazon Prime, and then they put it on their own streaming service, and I have I wrote a whole paper about this once. Like, how do you attach revenue to that product now when it's on the Disney streaming service? You can look at how many people have viewed it, how does that help with subscriptions, but it's pretty an asymmetrical sort of connection between the product and the revenue at that point. And so it's in a weird spot. I guarantee you it's going to debut on the Disney streaming service, which will be out in 9 months or something by the end of the year. And so that's right around the time it would be on an HBO or a Hulu. And so that's where it's going to start out at streaming life, or subscription streaming life, I should say. It'll be on VOD and stuff, rental and EST, electric sell through in about 3 months. So I think it's a tough movie. It's a tough performance here. It's in a really weird spot timing wise. It underperformed opening weekend. The quality's not there. I just think it's going to be a pretty big loss for Disney. And I guess, I came into this conversation starting the show. I was like, oh, it's an underperformance. It's not a flop. It does, as I look closer at the numbers and the fact that it's not going to be on a Netflix or a Hulu or anything like that, so they're not going to make that streaming revenue from that for the licensing fees. I feel like it's a flop right now. It does. And we'll see where it goes, but it's not a good performance at all. And with that high production costs and marketing costs, I just don't see how it's ever going to break even. But that's Dumbo. We'll watch how it does second weekend. It'll probably have a 45% drop second weekend. Children's film. I don't even know what's coming out next weekend. I gotta take a closer look, but I think it's gonna do okay. But I think in the long run, it's not gonna make Disney any money. It might lose them some money. Okay, so that was number one this weekend. Dumbo at $45 million. Number two was Us, $33.6 million, a 53% drop in its second weekend. That is a fantastic drop for a horror film. It's very average on a second weekend drop to drop, 50 to 55% ish. But for horror films, it's more like well over 55%, closer to 60% and on up, depending on if it's Freddy versus Jason. What did that drop? 68% or something? Or the new Friday the 13th, I think, dropped 69%, which wasn't that surprising. But this did not have a typical horror drop, which I didn't think it was going to. Still did $9,000 per theater. In its second weekend. Total take so far for Us is $128 million. How is this thing doing worldwide is the question for me. I just don't know if it's going to have a huge... Yeah, it hasn't done great foreign so far. $46 million, so $174 worldwide right now. This one's probably already in the green for the most part. It's a fantastic performance. Jordan Peele should be super proud of this. Universal, Blumhouse are all winners. Everybody involved in the film is going to make out, I think, very well. I think it's going to continue to have lower drops. It's not going to have the 5x multiplier to Get Out, but I think it's at least going to have a 3x multiplier, which is fantastic for a horror thriller like this. And I think, it's going to be quite profitable for Universal. And it's really cool to see this because there was some and I talked about this, a softening of the audience and audience sort of enjoyment of the film. I think specifically the ending. I think it was a little bit more challenging than people thought it was going to be going into it. As much as Get Out's amazing film, a great horror film, it's definitely more of a genre film that, was surprising, but didn't really push you that much as an audience, I don't think. And I think Us is a little bit more challenging. And that's why I thought the audience scores are a little bit softer than I had thought, but that doesn't seem to be affecting the box office at all right now. So it's a really great performance. Post-track exit surveys on this for the second weekend, 37% African-American, which again is way over-indexed the normal movie-going crowd. It's about 12% African-American here, it's 37%. Caucasians were 32%, they're normally 53%. Latinos were at 19% and Asians at 7%, which are pretty close to the averages. Men under 25 was the biggest quad, 27%. Men over 25 was 21%. Females under 25 were 25%. And females over 25 were 26%. That's way, way, way over indexing on under 25s, which is what you need to do for movies like this. You need to get young people out to see them. And these things will just crush money because they've got time, they have some disposable income, and it's like a social thing to do. And if you can get those people to go over and over again, it's like a cash cow, and that really helps. That's the reason why it has a low drop, is the young people are showing up to go to, because it's like a social, it's like the thing to do, is to go see this movie, and that's what helps with those lower drops and continuing to make money in its second, third, fourth weekend. So that was number two, Us at $33.6 million, fantastic second weekend. Captain Marvel, $20 million, 20.5 actually this weekend, and its fourth weekend. 40% drop, fantastic drop. $5,000 per theater, which is good in its fourth weekend. $353 million. I believe now $400 million is an absolute a given now. I don't see it petering out at all. If the drops were higher, it might not have made it to that $400 million mark. But it's easily, I think, going to get there and on up, maybe up to like 420, something like that. These are guesses, but I'm just sort of like reading the tea leaves, if you will. Great performance overall. I talked a ton about Captain Marvel over the last couple of weeks. As this performance continues to do well, it just solidifies. I think people are getting hyped up for Endgame, which comes out in like 3 weeks. I think just people are just... I don't know what's going to happen afterwards, which I find so funny, because I've never seen anything like this performance with MCU and following the box office, for the last 20 years. Nothing's even come close to this. This is a totally unique run from a studio. It's just grand slam after grand slam, not home runs, grand slams. Like, this will make $200 million in profit easily for a character who like half the world probably didn't know existed a year ago. With Brie Larson, who's not really like an action movie star or anything like that. They just have the recipe down. And they keep making them and they keep working. But I do wonder if that's going to change at all after Endgame. I don't know if it will. I don't think that it will. I go back and forth if you listen, I go back and forth on this issue constantly. Like, is MCU going to be completely different, post this April? Like, is it going to be a completely different ball game, and like, they're gonna have to start start a whole new series of characters? I don't think like Captain Marvel 2 is going to come out, Black Panther 2 is going to come out. They're going to lose Downey and Captain America and maybe Thor, but they'll find some other really cool people to play these characters, and I think they're going to do well. I just don't see it fading anytime soon. Now, the moment here I come around MCU being around forever, now that all of a sudden they're going to fall apart or something, that's probably what's going to happen. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. And Captain Marvel kind of proves that. Let's move on to number 4, 5 Feet Apart, 6.2 million. Wonderful drop, 27% drop in its third weekend. So good. In 2,800 theaters, per theater average was about 2,200 per theater. Total gross so far for 5 Feet Apart is almost $36 million in its third weekend. This one started out a little bit slower, but with these drops, Lionsgate has got to be super happy with this. They didn't expect this to make $100 million. It seems like it might leg itself into like 50 million, which is an awesome performance, I think, overall. Number 5 this weekend was a new wide release. I don't have a ton of information on this one, just because it was a smaller wide release, only in about 1,000 theaters. It was Unplanned from Pure Flix. And I was right. I didn't know anything about this movie, but like you look at the poster, the name, the company releasing it. It's a Christian film about abortion. There was some controversy about them not being able to buy ads. I don't know. There's a lot of like back and forth about it on Deadline. I didn't really get into it all that much, but they had some problems like buying advertising space for this film. It did pretty well though. $5,700 per theater. So 6.1 million for its opening weekend. That's not bad for a kind of a tiny wide release. Critics hated it, of course. 53% on Rotten Tomatoes. 5.6 out of 10 is the actual score. Audiences were at 93%. Again, I can't trust that. There's no cinema score here because it wasn't a big enough release. Same thing with Beach Bomb. 4 stars on Post Track. 80% positive. 65% definite recommend. This is one of those movies that's essentially critic proof. It's meant for evangelical Christians and maybe some like mainline Protestants and Catholics, and that's probably it. And those people go to see it for a very specific reason. They want a message that basically I don't want to say it's propaganda, but it's propaganda. Like, people go to see it to see their viewpoint reaffirmed. They don't go to see it to see their viewpoint challenged on any level. And that's why you get an 80%. This movie could have been just like anything that's still going to get an 80% positive score and a 93% audience score. Like, it's just one of those films that it's almost like a routine. You show up, you see your viewpoint viewed on screen in a sort of fictional narrative, and you're happy. And that's what happened. It's why I watch Lifetime Christmas movies and holiday movies. I want to watch big city woman go back to her hometown where there's like a poinsettia farm, and like she falls in love with a local guy. I know what's going to happen, and that's what I want to see. It's the same thing with Unplanned. Now the thing is, these movies don't necessarily ever really break out that much. Every once in a while, that song one last year did. It did break out, but 90% of the time they do not break out at all because it's meant for this concrete, specific, static group of people. They will go see it, they will go buy tickets, and that's it. And no one, it's not going to cross over to any other demographic. But I think it's, and it played well in the Midwest and the South. 9 out of the top 10 runs were in those places, which makes sense. That's where your religious sort of Bible belt is. And so they got what they wanted out of it. Females over 25 were the biggest draw here. I find that very strange. Females over 25. If it's a movie about abortion, you would feel like maybe women under 25 would show up a little bit more. I don't know. The over 25 audience was 78% of this. I just find that so bizarre. Females under 25 were only 13%, and males under 25 were 10%, which is not that surprising. I don't know. You just think a movie like this would appeal to younger women because they often find themselves in this situation where it's like, unplanned pregnancy, you're a teenager, you're in your early 20s, you don't have any money, what do you do? And those are the people that have to face that really tough choice about what to do. You would think they would show up more to this, but like on the other hand, the people who care most about this issue are usually the ones who aren't directly involved in it for whatever reason. I'm going to get off my moral high ground right now and continue on with the show. Okay, let's see what is next here in the top 10. Number 6 was Wonder Park, 4.9 million, 43% drop, sitting at $37 million, $38 million. That's a loss for Paramount. I don't know how much they're going to lose, $50 million, $100 million, but it's definitely a pretty big flop. Number 7 was How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, 4.2 million, 35% drop, great drop. Starting to lose theaters, lost 562 theaters. Per theater average was about $1,500 per theater in its 6th weekend. It has made $152 million. The big question on that one, is it doing well enough for Universal to continue on that series or end it at the 3rd movie? I think they will continue it on, but it will be like 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 years before they do that. Hotel Mumbai from Bleecker Street was a limited release, kind of went wide, added 920 theaters this weekend. Performance was okay, $3,400 per theater. I think it's like supposed to be a very good film. Bleecker Street is not great at these sort of releases for whatever reason. What have they put out? I also thought that they went out of business for a while. Yeah, Bleecker Street is so weird, man, because it's like they put out, like, these are their top 3 films. I'll do top 5 films. Bleecker Street. Lucky Logan, which was a disaster. Eye in the Sky didn't do very well. Megan Levy didn't do very well. Lost City of Z was a disaster. Trumbo was a disaster. Unsane was a disaster. They did put out Leave No Trace and Captain Fantastic, which are very kind of oddly similar movies, and I'm thinking about it. Both phenomenal films. They just, I don't know, I think they're newer. They've only put out 29 films overall. Their first film was Danny Collins back in 2015. He also did Beast of Nations with Netflix. Eye in the Sky was 2016. Ellison. They just haven't found the right path here. They haven't had a hit yet. Hotel Mumbai is not going to be a hit. They've had some really high quality movies made. Disobedience. Is Breathe good? I think Breathe's supposed to be pretty good. It's kind of it's a little bit mind-boggling to me. I throw them in the lot with like A24 and Neon, Annapurna as like newer upstart distribution distribution companies. They're like independent distribution companies, and it's like, whereas A24 has really found a specific brand and voice pretty quickly and has been able to translate that into like Moonlight winning Best Picture. And so a long line of really interesting films. Now, they all done well financially? Not really. But like, I think A24 has this stature now in the industry that will turn into dollars sooner rather than later. Bleecker Street, feels like it started just a little bit after the A24, and it just has not been able to find its sea legs in this business. And I do wonder how long it's going to last. Annapurna is kind of similar, despite the fact that like, I think it's Megan Elson, and her father's Larry Elson, the billionaire from Oracle, deep pockets, right? But they also haven't found their sea legs on how to get these films out there and branding and stuff like that. So it's unfortunate because I think Hotel Mumbai is probably a really fantastic movie, but it's just not doing very well, and it's not going to make a lot of money. And if it doesn't do those two things, it's probably not going to get any awards contention, right? Those two things do go hand in hand sometimes. Look at Green Book. Green Book won Best Picture and won Golden Globes because it did well at the box office and it played well with sort of, a normal mass audience. You have, at some level, sometimes you have to do that to get the awards contention and recognition. Number 9 this weekend was Tyler Perry's Medea Family Funeral, 2.7 million, 38% drop. It's just, like I was saying, it's just, this one's performing so well. Especially the opening was okay, but these fourth, fifth weekends, whatever it is on, what is it on now? Fifth weekend. It's just crushing. It's absolutely crushing. Let's check in on the where it is in the Medea 9-movie series. It now sits at number 3. It's only 3 million off of Boo and Medea Halloween. I think it's going to pass that pretty easily here. I don't think it's going to hit number 1. Tyler Perry's Medea Goes to Jail. But really great. It just goes to show you that, like, my perception of that film was front-loaded as hell. Like, it's going to do fantastic opening weekend with that group of people, mostly women over the age of 25, African-American. That's the key demographic here for Tyler Perry movies. They're going to go see it, and they're going to see it the first week or two, and then it's going to just fade away. But no, it's like, it's playing strong weekend after weekend, and I think it's going to play strong all the way through Easter, which is, 3 weeks away. So great performance there. Maybe it's not the last Tyler Perry Medea movie then. Number 10 was a new wide release in 1,100 theaters, was The Beach Bum, the Harmony Korine movie with Anthony McConaughey from Neon. I was just talking about Neon related to, like, Bleecker Street. This one is just, I don't know. Like I said last weekend, no one's going to see this movie. Nobody saw this movie. It did $1.8 million in 1,100 theaters. Per theater average on its opening weekend was $1,600. It's already below the Mendoza line, which is $2,000 for a wide release, where it's like theaters are like, I'm not going to play this movie. Why would I do that? I'm not going to make any money. And so, it's just like, if you just do like the math on that, like really quickly, like let's just say it's not going to play in more than one screen in the theater. So it did $1,600 per theater. Let's assume that like a ticket price, they're now like the new MPAA report came out last week or 2 weeks ago. And lifted the average ticket price to $9. Let's just say it's $10. Let's say it's $9.50, right? So $1,636 was the actual per theater average. If you divide that into tickets, that's 172 tickets per the entire weekend per theater. And let's say there's 4 showings a day, divided by 3 days. You're talking 14 people are showing up for each show. Imagine a movie theater and 14 people showing up for each showing. It's a bomb. It's a massive bomb. It's a way underperformance from where it probably should be. But like, if you take a big step back, this was never going to do well. There's no real audience for this outside of a very small set of intellectuals and hipsters that live in like big cities or anywhere in the country. But it's like a tiny sliver. It's like a sliver of the hipster audience that wants to go see this. And that's it. So I don't know what Neon expected here. It's like the worst opening ever for Matthew McConaughey. It's worse than the Serenity movie from Viron, whatever the hell they're called. That debacle of a film that came out earlier this year that I have to see because it's going to be a cult classic. I know it. This is just a horrific performance, but not at all unsurprising. There's no reason to put this thing in the theaters. I just don't get the concept here. Like, you could have, and maybe they'll get like the viral meme play on this in like a couple of weeks or something, or like 3 months when it comes out on VOD. But why wouldn't you just, I don't know. This is my thought process, is like, why don't you just put it up on YouTube and just put ads every 20 minutes? You're probably going to make more. I don't know. This is me totally bullshitting, but I'm just going to say it. You're going to make some money. And the question there then is like, are you going to make more money than the $900K you made this weekend to play this in movies? Then what about all the costs to put it in movie theaters, which is not a small cost? I just think there's definitely alternative distribution methods that are very popular right now that can make a lot of money that would have been better for a movie like Beach Bum. That's all I'm going to say. Now, it could have broken out. You never know. But the potential upside here is massive for the box office and exhibition, but the downside's pretty massive too. So that's just something, Neon should probably keep in mind. Why don't you just play Neon like, it's the Alamo Drafthouse people, or at least one of them. Like, just play it there for like 2 months, 3 months, and like see how it does, and then put it on VOD and call it a day. Okay, that's enough for the ranting. Let's go. Anything outside the top 10 we want to talk about? Gloria Bells was 11, 1 point from A24, another sort of indie startup. 1.1 million, 4.1 million total so far in its fourth weekend, going nowhere. Any like crazy high per theater averages? Lowest per theater average in the top 10 goes to Medea Family Funeral, but that's in its fifth weekend. Wonder Park was close in its third weekend at like $1,400, $1,500. Apollo 11 from Neon as well, also kind of sticking around. $7.6 million so far. I thought that one was going to break out more. It hasn't. Upside is now at 107 from STX. Great win for them. Green Book's still out there at $85 million so far. Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse just plugging away. Even though it's on VOD, people are going to see it in theaters. $190 million. There was some smaller wide releases. Diane from IFC. Do I know this movie? Should I know this movie? Is this like a Princess Diane film? It looks like it. Did nothing. 9K per theater in 3 theaters. Awful. You'll never hear about that one ever again. Okay, so there's not much outside the top 10 to really dive into. Let's talk about what's coming out over the next few weeks and close out the show. So we're getting close to the next week. Okay, so this weekend's going to be fun. We're going to have Best of Enemies from STX. That's not going to do anything. Pet Sematary and Shazam are coming out. I'm excited about both of these to talk about these. I don't really know how either of them are going to do. My guess right now is that Pet Sematary is going to open, like, I think the guesses from Paramount were like, oh, like mid-20s-ish. I think that seems fair. It's not opening on more than 4,000. It's only opening in 3,400 theaters. So that's going to hurt its ability to, like, push that $25-30 million mark. My gut says it's going to do quite well because it has this... It has like, it's like the It style, like gloss to it. So what has happened, I would say, and I wrote a whole essay about this on Medium if you're bored. What's happened in the horror film world is that everything post Conjuring, there's been this sort of mass appeal, almost poptimism, sort of sleekness to these horror films that are coming out. And Pet Sematary definitely has that. It feels very indebted to It, the new It that came out in 2017. It just looks sharp. It looks quick. It looks like just a highly polished... It's almost kind of like maybe it probably started back in 2003 with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, which like had really nothing to do with the original style or vibe or tone whatsoever, but like was super flashy and sleek and just did very well. And this is kind of a continuation of that style. Let's take an old story, an old movie, and let's, put a new shiny coat of paint on it and see how it does. I think it's going to do okay. Us came out last weekend, so we've had a recent horror film. This is only going to be, 3 weeks after that, or 2 weeks after that. So I think 25 to 25-ish is a good range to start. My gut says... in order to do 30 million, that's sort of my barometer right now. If this thing can do 30 million, it's a pretty big, I think, a significant breakout. It would have to do $8,823. So $8,800 per theater to hit that $30 million mark in that number of theaters. So, God, I don't know. I have no idea how to read this. I really don't. My gut says it might break out, but like there's a bigger part of me that think it's just going to play pretty middling, right in the middle of the road. So I think Paramount's probably right, probably in like the mid-20s for that. Shazam, who the freak knows how this is going to do? I guess it's DCEU technically. The preview shows last weekend did really well, but they were skewed because there was 3 show times versus the one like Aquaman had. No clue. I honestly couldn't even remotely tell you what that's going to do. It's in 4,100 theaters plus. That's a super wide saturated release. Baseline, it probably does 8K per theater. So you're looking at like low 30s for that. But like, is that even remotely accurate? I feel like this thing is going to do like a 40-ish. I feel like there's a big audience. Comic books are like everything. And like people love that shit. So I think it's going to do okay. What else is coming up? The Wind from IFC, a horror film. That looks pretty cool. It basically looks like The Witch meets Quiet Things or Quiet Place. What the hell's that movie called? I think it's going to do nothing. No one's going to see that movie. A highlight from A24 is coming out. Amazing Grace from Neon. Peter Liu from Amazon Studios. A lot of limited releases. None of them are going to do anything. April 12th, After comes out. Hellboy, Little, Missing Link. I have seen nothing on Hellboy. And maybe I'm not the target demographic, but I have seen nothing on it. Little, I feel like I talk about this movie every week at the podcast, and I don't know what it is. Oh, yeah, okay. That looks like it's going to do okay. After, I don't know. Oh, another... a Virion, picture, whatever the fuck you call it. It's a young adult book adaptation. Dude, they're just like pushing out these like weirdly mid-90s dimension sex thrillers. And this one looks, I mean, the posters, it's like, it's like nearly pornographic. So who knows? That's going to do nothing. Missing Link from United Artists, that's going to do nothing. It's a really weird... April's so weird this year. I think Pet Sematary and Shazam are going to do well. Hellboy, I have nothing that's going to do on the 12th. So Shazam and Pet Sematary clean up in their second weekends. Curse of La Llorona, I should say. That comes out April 19th. I think that's going to do okay. I don't know. We've had a lot of horror movies. Like... What did I say when it did so well? The studios are going to dump horror movies on us, and that's what's happening. We're having like 3 or 4 in a single month. Like that's pretty rare. And they're big movies too. La Llorona, I think, will open like 30, 40-ish, maybe on higher. Remember, Nun opened at like 50 something. It's so weird. But it has the weekend to itself. But it's coming after Pet Sematary and Us in the last month. So I don't know. I would say 30 to 40-ish opening on that one. It's not going to like super break out. Maybe it pushes past 40, but I don't think so. 30 to 40. Under the Silver Lake from A24, the follow-up to It Follows. I forget the guy's name. Something Robert Michael Mitchell or something. I don't know. Whatever his name is. This one is like considered to be like... this one's already a cult classic before it came out. It is considered like this generation's Southland Tales. If you don't know what Southland Tales is Richard Kelly put out Donnie Darko in like 2001. Nobody saw it at all. It got like, essentially what happened was like, it was a small movie made for like $5 million. It was super weird. No one had any idea how to release it. I have no idea how it even got made. But it was supposed to come out like the week after 9/11, and it involves like a jet engine thing. And so they just basically pulled the entire film. But like when it hit like DVD, it just became this almost like, within a year of it getting released, a cult classic. I remember seeing it for the first time. I was like, what the hell is this? This is amazing. I think it's a masterpiece. Absolute masterpiece. Richard Kelly's follow-up film, Southland Tales, after all this cachet he'd built up, releases one of the most ridiculous, absurd films I've ever seen in my life. I saw it with Richard Kelly in the audience at the Richmond Film Festival, and it was just an absolute train wreck. That's what makes it a cult classic. It's like you have this amazing film director who then is basically takes the rein. You take the reins off of him, let him do whatever he wants, and he makes this clusterfuck of a movie. And that's what Under the Silver Lake is for, I think, this generation. Looks, I have to see it. I just have to see it. Looks like a total mess. So that's not going to do anything. Curse of La Llorona is going to own the April 19th weekend. The 17th Wednesday, I guess, is a sort of Easter then. Breakthrough and Penguins are coming out. Breakthrough, I don't know too much about. I don't know. I don't really care all that much. Topher Grace is in it, so that's cool. Penguins is obviously a documentary. And then Avengers Endgame on the 26th, which the big question with Avengers Endgame, or there's two big questions. One, does it break the all-time record for opening weekend, which is what, 257, I think, for the first Avengers Infinity War? Two, what's its multiplier look like? You know, let's say it opens like baseline 250, you know, can it hit a 3x multiplier? It makes 750? Probably not. Like, movies like this probably have like a 2.5 multi, so it's like 625. So it's like you're looking at a movie that's going to make $625 million as a given. It's like unbelievable. And then MCU kind of moves on to something else, something different. And then we get into summer. Oh man, summer's coming on strong. Nobody wants to open a movie for the 2 weeks after Avengers End War, so it's pretty wide. It's pretty wide empty. In any event, that's all I have for today, folks. I will be back next weekend. This has been the Wildline Podcast.